Hello everybody, welcome back to Miss B's Plan B. It's lovely to see you. I hope that you're well. This week we're going to be looking at birds again, but today we're going to be focusing on what birds eat. So my first question for you is, what do you think birds eat? Have a bit of thinking time. How many different things can you think of? You might want to pause the video if you're thinking of lots of different things. And let's get ready to share some of your thoughts. So what do birds eat? I'm sure some of you have said things like worms, berries, seeds, nuts. Maybe some of you have mentioned carrion, so the decaying flesh of other animals that are dead. So birds do eat a variety of things, and different species eat different things as well. That's important to know. Now what we're going to think about next is, when do you think it is harder for birds to find food? When is it the toughest time of year for them to find food? I reckon you've guessed that straight away. Well done if you said winter. But a bit trickier, why do you think it is so much harder for birds during the winter? Can you actually explain that? Have a bit of thinking time. Might want to pause the video again if you're thinking up a reason. Why is it harder for them to feed during the winter? And let's talk about that. So, as you're aware, during winter the daylight hours are shorter and the nights are longer and colder, which means there's less time for birds to actually be finding their food, because most birds feed during the daytime. Also, another problem during winter is lots of the creatures that they eat, so things like the insects and the worms, they actually hibernate. So the worms, for example, will bury deep into the ground to get beneath the frost and the snow, and many insects hibernate, a state they call diapause in insects, and they stop for the winter. So it just makes it much tougher for them to find food. Next, I want you to think about, do all birds feed in the same way? Now, if any of you are keen bird spotters anyhow, and maybe have a feeder at home, you find that some birds love bird feeders. You get some of the smaller birds, like maybe wrens and blue tits, they come and feast at a bird feeder, whereas you get other birds like blackbirds which prefer to feed from the ground. So again, birds feed in different ways. What we're going to do today is we're actually going to learn how to make a hanging bird feeder, and then you can start attracting more birds to your local area. How to make your own bird feeder out of a plastic milk container. So here we go, I'm going to do a step-by-step guide. First of all, I'm going to talk about the equipment you will need. You will need, first of all, either a milk bottle, okay, a plastic milk bottle, or I know lots of you are switching from that to other types of bottles, so you might have a Tetra Pak carton instead. Either is fine. You will also need scissors. Okay, they don't have to be really sharp. These type of scissors worked fine for me. You might also find it very handy if you have a pen. Just a normal biro is fine. You might have some bamboo sticks at home, which will work well, or if you haven't got the skewers, first of all, if you do have the skewers, be super careful because they are very sharp and pointy at the end, so be careful where you put those, keep them well away from your eyes and hands, okay? But if you don't have those, it's absolutely fine just to use a couple of normal sticks you might find in the garden, as long as they are quite straight and quite thin. Also, it might be handy if you have a bit of blue tack, and at the end you will need some bird food. So not too many things. So here we go, I'm going to talk you step by step how you can make your very own bird feeder for the birds in your garden or local area. Here we go. So first of all, once you've decided which container you're going to use, I'm actually going to use the milk container. What you must do first of all is make sure that it is very clean inside. Otherwise germs will build up, so you need to make sure all the milk is washed out thoroughly and it's dry inside, because again, we don't want the food going soggy. That's the first step. Once you've done that, what you're going to do next is you're going to get your container and we're going to start making holes in it. This is where I personally found the pen the best option. Now, some of you might want to use something different, especially if you've got an adult supervising, but I found a pen worked really well because it's got the sharp metal point. And what I did was I made, first of all, opposite pairs of holes at the bottom of my container, here and here, in a cross pattern, because this is where I'm going to put my skewers at the end to perch my birds on. Okay, so what I did was I pushed like this and keep twisting and twisting and twisting and twisting. Okay, twisting and twisting and twisting, twisting and twisting and twisting, twisting and twisting. So you've got 4 holes at the bottom opposite each other. So there's a pair of holes and there's a pair of holes this end. Then what I did is I now want to create feeding holes where I'm going to have it where the birds can perch on my stick and feed. So I'm going to create some more holes here. Again, you can do it either end as well. And that's my next step. Okay. Following on from that, what I did was I got my scissors, and in these holes here, I was then able to cut sections out, almost like doors. This is where the birds are going to feed from. So I'll show you my next step here. Okay, so I've got sections here, 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 and here. So I've made 4 sections. You don't have to have 4. You could just maybe do 2 on either side. Okay, it's totally up to you. Okay, now this is where we can then get our sticks, which again you could have made using your pen, or I found if you do have bamboo skewers, because they are so sharp, you can actually make the holes using those. Okay, you can then push those through like this. Push, 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 push. There we go. And then you have your little stands that the birds can sit and feed on. Okay, so that's the next step. What we need to think about next is how we can hang our bird feeders. So for this, what I'd like you to do is take your cap off. Okay, and this is where it's handy to have a piece of blue tack, because you're going to make a hole in the cap. And I found by putting it on the blue tack and pushing firmly, okay, very quickly and easily, you've got yourself a hole. And if you want to make it a bit wider, you can just put your pen through like that a bit more, but it doesn't need to be too wide, because it just has to be big enough to thread your thread through. Okay, the next step, once you've got your bird feeder looking like this, okay, you're then going to decorate it. Okay, so I've designed mine, I've called it a bird cafe. And you can see, so they're the skewers at the bottom, or your sticks, so you'll need bigger holes if you're using sticks. At the bottom, I've got my bits here, which is where the birds will poke their heads through. So please make sure when you're cutting it that you do it carefully and smoothly, because plastic can actually be quite sharp. So we want to make sure we're not leaving sharp edges that could harm the birds. And then I've decorated my bird cafe. I've put a piece of string through my hole at the end. I've tied a knot. I've done a big knot to make sure it doesn't slip through. And then I've tied another knot so that I've got a hanging bit here. And then I have my bird cafe. My final step will be to get my lovely bird food and put it in the bottom like that. And we'll fill it up right up as high as it will go. Okay, so that then your birds can come, perch on the sticks and eat from the bottle. Okay, so there is your very own bird cafe. So at any point during the video, if you want to pause it, okay, just to check what step you're doing, you can do so, and that will really help. And just remember, just be careful with things like the skewers, because they are sharp. What I did once I'd finished with the skewers, pushing them through, I actually used the scissors just to chop the ends off like that, so that there weren't sharp points at the end, so nobody gets hurt. And then I'm later going to pop this out in my garden, and hopefully it will attract lots of lovely birds. And if you're interested in looking for lots of lovely birds, what you might want to do is go to the RSPB website, because on Friday the 29th to the 31st of January this year, 2021, they are actually holding the Big Garden Bird Watch, which is an annual event, and it's really, really useful to take part, because it helps give the RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, it gives them a glimpse into, a little snapshot into what's happening to bird populations around the UK, and that can be really helpful for them, because then they might spot some problems if any bird species are declining, and then they can think about what we can do to help that. So it's really great to take part in that, and it's a really enjoyable, relaxing thing, because you can just spend 1 hour just sitting in your garden or watching out the window counting the birds. So I hope that inspires you to go off and make your own bird cafe. Have lots of fun in the process and get creative. Take care. Goodbye.